All right. Welcome to another episode of Connect and Politic. We're here with a special guest. Please introduce yourself by telling us your name, where you're currently located, and your favorite snack.
My name is David Collins. I'm currently located in Independence, Missouri, which is a suburb of Kansas City, Missouri. And my favorite snack is probably peanut butter and crackers. I don't know. Yeah.
Any special? You mean the pre-made ones?
No, I like Jif peanut butter on a cracker. I just love it. So I've eaten it since I was a child. So
Nice. And do you remember your favorite food as a child?
macaroni and cheese, man. Always. It's always been macaroni and cheese. I will eat that shit by I did it again. I will eat it by the gallon.
And this is homemade or
Both. I'm relatively indiscriminate. I prefer homemade, but in a pinch, I will go with the Kraft Blue Box macaroni and cheese. So
nice.
not sponsored, by the way.
And do you what's your favorite meal now as an adult?
Oh, my favorite meal now. I have a tie. I have a tie between. I really love like a beautiful ribeye steak with a sweet potato, or my mother's meatloaf recipe is absolutely amazing. I've shared that with lots of people, and they're all like, "This is the best meatloaf I've ever had." Yeah, it's really good.
And so, when was the last time you had either one of those meals?
Well, I had a steak a couple weeks ago. My daughter and her girlfriend came up to spend the evening, and so I made dinner, and so I had steak and whatnot, and then meatloaf has probably been, I don't know, probably 6 months. Yeah.
Nice.
So,
What's your fondest memory from childhood?
mm, that's a rough question. My childhood wasn't a happy one. Probably my fondest memory. There's two of them, you'll find I don't have like a favorite thing. I have like things that are equated to one another.
Yeah.
But so first, my when I was about 4 years old, I remember the man who I call my father. He's my stepfather, but he's been my daddy all my life, right? And he died in 1998, but he when he asked my mother to marry him, he came in and had my brother and I sit down on the love seat, and he got down on one knee and asked my mother to marry him, and my mother looked at me and my brother and said, "Boys, what do y'all say?" Um, and that was I remember that vividly. Makes me emotional because it's one of those moments where you realize your parents really do care, or at least, it was one of those moments that defined kind of like, I know my mother loves me, one of those type of moments. And then the other one is probably, I used to get grounded a lot because I was a rather mischievous child. That's to put it lightly. And so, we lived in Houston, Texas at the time, and it was hot and it was raining, and we couldn't go outside in the summertime. And my brother and I had been just absolutely driving my mother just bonkers, right? She was just at the end of her rope. And so she'd sent us to our room, and my dad came home from work, and my mother was in the kitchen. She was kind of slamming, she was angry and just hard closing cabinets. And he came in and he said, "What's the matter with you?" And I heard my mother say, "Those damn kids are driving me crazy." And he said, "Look, woman, you knew I had them kids when you married me." Right. And honestly, Mike, that's the day that I stopped calling my stepdad by his name and started calling him dad. Was that day, because it was it was just a defining moment, those are two great memories from my childhood that kind of epitomize the love my parents had, for my brother and I.
Do you miss anything about being a child?
Innocence. I wish I could go back and see the world as a child again. But other than, yeah, I don't. My parents, we moved out of Houston when I was a teenager, and when I was almost 13 years old.
Mhm.
Um, I had a really, really rough childhood between my biological father and just other things that happened when I was in Texas.
Yeah.
Um, there's a period of my life. Just to let you know, kind of my life has been bookended by trauma, and it's just what it is. Everybody was raised the same way I was raised. And my parents weren't mean or anything like that. But my parents, they if you did something wrong, my parents just they my mom would whip you with a switch, my dad would whip you with a belt. As I got older, that changed, became a little different. But there's a period of time between when I was 7 and when I was about 12 years old that I remember things, but I can't tell you when they were
Mhm.
because I had some trauma there about 7 years old where I was, um, my biological father wanted to teach my mother a lesson, and he found a judge that would do it in Texas, and he had me picked up by the Harris County Sheriff's Department from school, put in handcuffs at 7 years old, put in a squad car, and take it to a juvenile detention facility. Did not tell my mother where I was going. My mother could not visit me. Nothing. I just thought my parents just gave me away. I had no idea what was happening because I was 7, and you don't understand the world when you're 7. So I never felt safe again in Houston and then when we moved out of Houston, then everything kind of changed for me. But those 5, 6 years is just oof, bad. Um, you know.
Yeah.
So no, I don't really miss anything other than my innocence. That's
Yeah.
it.
And how do you think that your childhood helped groom you into who you are today?
Mm. Um, that's a really great question, by the way. While I'm thinking about this, that's so. I think my childhood gave me a lot of really bad things, right? Like I had anger issues. Like I tell it's a joke. I say it as a joke, but it's really not a joke. Like when I was a teenager, I'd fight a stop sign, right? I had a problem with authority. You couldn't tell me grease was greasy. I mean, if you told me don't do it, I was damn sure gonna do it. You just can't. And I'm still that way a little bit, right? Like I tell people all the time, don't tell me how to live my life, right? Don't tell me what to do, right? You can tell me what to do or how to do it, but you're not doing both. I think that's a good rule in life, right? And so but I had a lot of anger issues, a lot of I like to fight, you know, and then I decided to go in the military because I wanted to go to college, but my parents didn't have money for me to go to college. And they offered to pay for me to go to college, but I was like, that's my parents' money. That's not my money. I don't have the right to do that. So I went in the army to get college money, but really it was probably the best decision I ever made because the army taught me how to manage that that side of me because you have to have discipline and you have to have self-discipline most of all. um, and then, but I think my anger and whatnot kind of moved me in that direction because I knew what I needed. I just didn't know how to do it for myself,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, um, but I think, my childhood made me more compassionate. Today I work with a group called Bikers Against Child Abuse. And if you don't know who we are, I wholeheartedly invite people to go and look up bakaworld.org. We're a nonprofit 501c3 entity, and we work with abused children to help them not feel afraid of the world in which they live. So we're not role models or any of that stuff. We simply try to make them feel safe, right? We go to court with them. And we're a volunteer organization. We're a group of committed volunteers. Nobody gets paid, but we ride for these children, and we help them understand that what happened to them doesn't define them. And that's the thing that I had to learn was what happened to me didn't define my life. And so we help them understand that what happened doesn't define them. What happened, it was not their fault.
Mhm.
And then we help them kind of understand that it's good to talk to people about these things. So I think that my childhood helped me kind of make that decision of kind of taking two things that I love. I love riding motorcycles, and I like helping people. So
Yeah. Um, as what's your bike of choice?
I have a 2003 Harley Davidson Ultra Classic. Now, if you really want to know the truth, anybody who wants to ride a Harley Davidson, I'm going to tell you this: you need two things. You need a lot of patience and a lot of money. Right? If you don't have both of those things, don't buy a Harley Davidson. I don't have a lot of money. Therein lies the rub. I got a lot of patience, but I don't have a lot of money. So when
Yeah,
you go to repair them, they are very expensive.
yeah,
So I would say if anybody's looking to buy a motorcycle and they want a cruiser like a Harley Davidson, I would tell you to go look at an Indian motorcycle or something that's cheaper to own over the long haul, because Harley's just gotten out of control with, you know.
yeah. What a so you did let me know if I got this right. You live with your biological dad up till 7, right?
Well, my parents divorced. My biological father was abusive to my mother while she was. Um, there's a long story there, but the long and the short of it is, um, he believed he was sterile because his ex-wife told him that he was sterile, and his ex-wife actually paid a doctor to tell him he was sterile because she didn't want to have any kids, and she was on birth control the whole time they were married. So she
Wow.
basically fooled him. So then they got divorced, and then he married my mother, and then my mom got pregnant, right?
Right. Right.
And so he thought my mother, that I wasn't his kid, and so he had some other issues. He was a Korean War veteran who really never came home from
Yeah.
that war.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's not to make excuses, but it's what it is, and and he was abusive to her. So right after I was born, my mother left that relationship,
Okay.
um, and then she met my dad. She met him. The man I call my dad. She met him when I was about three and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, really, let's focus on your dad and your mom. What are some of the most important lessons you've learned from them?
Um, from my mother, uh, from my mother was a Southern matriarch. That anybody who's been around a Southern matriarch, I think that'll make sense to you. But my mother was a Southern matriarch. She's a very strong woman. She wasn't one of those, clutch my pearls kind of women. She was I'll snatch you by the neck kind of woman. And my mother, if you got lippy with my mom, she'd burn you down in church. She didn't care. She did not care. She would absolutely just wreck you wherever you were. It didn't matter. Um, I got many a beaten in the middle of a grocery store when I was a child for throwing. It happened, and people just walked right on by you in the '70s. They were just like, "That's your kid," and nobody looked, nobody said nothing. Today, people would be like, "You can't touch that baby," and in the '70s, no, they stand and clap. They're like, "Yeah, that's how you do it," and so that's So my mom was a very strict disciplinarian. Just, you toe the line, you didn't give her any flack, and and but she was also a very caring and woman at the same time. My mom was able to straddle that line really well, I think, at least in my viewpoint. Other people who viewed her probably were like, "That woman's crazy," but um, but she showed me. I think growing up, she showed me one, how to be a young man, how to be polite, how to be kind, how to be courteous, how to be compassionate to other people. My father taught me how to treat a woman. My father taught me how the way he treated my mother. I'm telling you, you didn't say a cross word around my mother, because my dad was. I remember I was about. I don't know, I was probably 8 or 9. I don't, but there were some guys in a restaurant, and they were kind of cussing and cutting up, and they looked like they were business guys out out having drinks or whatever, and they were cussing. And my dad just quietly got up from the table and went over, and one of them that was kind of the loudmouth, he just grabbed him by the back of his neck, and he said, "Do you see my wife sitting over there? Watch your mouth." And he just let go of him and walked back and sat down, and that was the end of that. There was like, um, but my dad always said, you got to pick your battles in the world. You can't whip the world. You know, and my parents also taught me, because so I know this is a long answer, but my long answers and short answers are probably the same length. So it's funny. My mother's family came from Georgia, right? And they migrated to Houston. My father's family is from Missouri, and my dad migrated to Houston. Well, my mother's family was incredibly racist, right? Especially her mother. Like the word black didn't exist in her vocabulary, if you catch my meaning, right? I had to have like, if my friends came over, because we lived in a neighborhood in Houston where my brother and I were the only two white kids in our neighborhood. Everybody else was black or Hispanic, and we all spoke English and Spanish fluently. And so if my friends came over and my grandmother was at our house, I had to give them a racial debriefing. I had to be like, don't pay any attention to my grandmother. She just raises, but she never left that old world South. Right. And my parents were like, that is not how you behave, And so they taught me, very early on that the language that my grandmother used is not acceptable, you know? And so, and I don't accept it. I don't allow it, uh,
Nice.
anywhere, anything that kind of stuff. So I've been kind of a champion of that throughout my life when I was in the military and whatnot. I just didn't allow that people to talk that way around me,
Nice.
you know?
What's your favorite things to do for self-care? I think I kind of have an idea. For one, you like riding
Oh,
your bike.
I ride my bike. So drinking bourbon I got a emotional support shelf back there. That's I like I'm a bourbon connoisseur. I just like to, I don't drink a lot. I just like to have a drink every now and then. And I love that kind of stuff. I play video games online. That's part of my kind of, I have combat PTSD. And so I play video games online with friends, which has helped through this whole coronavirus deal because it's, I live by myself primarily. And so being by myself a lot is really bad for my PTSD. You tend to spiral if you're in that category. So it's helped. I stream video games and so I have social interaction via, and I talk with folks about life and about things that are going on with them. And so I do that. Those are the things I do primarily is,
What's your favorite game?
Elder Scrolls Online is my favorite game right now. I'm also playing the Division 2. It's in a really good state right now. So as far as that game goes, they just released their title update 10, but I primarily like MMOs. I don't have those Twitch reflexes that I used to have for like like shooter games and stuff. And I've learned over the years that first person shooters actually trigger my PTSD because they limit my peripheral vision too much. And they really just mess with me. So I just stopped playing them altogether. So if it's a third person game, I'll play it. But if it's a first person game, I just can't engage it anymore.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying not to be hateful to people who love me.
And so you do those things for self-care. What do you do for self-growth?
I'm a college professor by trade. So I teach English and literature. I'm a linguist. I have a kind of a four-pronged master's degree. And so that's my education. So I read. I try to watch documentaries as well because documentaries for me are essays on film and that you can kind of consume them a little faster, than you can other media. So I watch a lot of that kind of stuff. I try to have conversations with folks online and listen to other people's perspectives and kind of gain their perspective, unless it's just completely ludicrous. When people come in like the earth is flat and I'm like, no, it's not. That's demonstrably false. And so I those people, I just don't engage silliness. That's what I call, I don't call them stupid. They're just silly, they have some silly ideas in the world, and sometimes we just have to go, nope, that's silly. And I'm not going to engage that, so, but, I, I try to have conversations with folks who have a different knowledge set than I have, right? And so I'm constantly trying to learn, and I'm trying to I guess I want to have conversations with people who are way smarter than me, um, you know, um, which has been hard the last few months because we're all kind of locked down.
Yeah. So I mean, you alluded to this that what you do in your professional life. So you're a
Mhm.
professor,
Yes,
correct?
sir. Mhm.
Um, is this is being a professor what you dreamed about being doing as a kid, or is it different?
Uh, I don't think I dreamed it. I never had a dream job because I never wanted to work all my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was like, people are like, what's your dream job? And I'm like, I don't dream about working. You know, it's just kind of silly to me. If you're dreaming about working, get another job. Right. So find something else to do. But no, so I became a professor. It's kind of a weird tale, but, when I got out of the military, I went to work in corrections for the state of Missouri, which is not a good job. Just I call it the Department of Corruption, but that's just me. A lot of times in those professions, the people you're working for are worse than a lot of the inmates you're around, as far as kind of their viewpoints and things. But it was a very negative environment, very, very negative. And I was coming home every day angry, and I was like sitting and watching TV, and my fists. I was just, I was off work for an hour, and I was just sitting there, making fists. And I looked at my feet, and I was making fists with my feet, and I was like, "What are you doing, man? You know what? You shouldn't be this stressed out, man. You're 26 years old, dude. You know." So I decided that when I got off work every day, I was going to sit down and I was going to write about this. Probably should have been if I'd have been smarter, I'd have gotten this sooner. But anyway, you're catching your second. I was going to write about a time that made me happy. Right. And so I did that every day when I got off work for a month. Right. And then I looked back through those things after a month, and everything that I'd written was when I was reading, writing, or teaching.
Oh,
And I was like, okay, so let's go do that. Right. And then I talked to my mom about it. And my mom's like, David, you've been a teacher since you were in second grade. You used to get your homework done, and then you go around and teach other people. But see, I don't remember that because that's part of that life, that
yeah,
part, that time span that I don't remember.
yeah.
But I do remember in high school, I would like, it wasn't cool to be smart. So I would finish a test, and everybody else is looking around, and everybody else is still working on a test. And then I would go back and change some answers that I knew were right, and I would calculate my grade and turn that in. So because I didn't want to be an A student.
Wow.
Right. And then when I went to college, I was just like, wow, give me more, so that's kind of, how I figured out that this is what I should do.
Yeah. So, what type of what do you teach?
I teach English composition and literature, and the literature I teach is primarily early British literature. So I teach the Knights of the Round Table and Beowulf, and I love all of that stuff about chivalry. And I just that if the world would go back to kind of that, and drinking blood from the skulls of our enemies, I think we'd be a lot better off.
That's interesting. So,
Stop a lot of arguments. I can tell you that.
sure. If you were to write a book, what would it be about?
I actually am working on a paper that I'd like to turn into a book. And it's, I'm this summer, I took this summer off from teaching so I could do some research, which I haven't done yet because my sleep schedule's upside down. I'm sleeping in the day and working at night. Um, and so I really, there's a book I want to write, and it's that the 20th century motorcycle culture, right? What we consider when we look at things like, the Hollywood motorcycle viewpoint. I'm not talking about Sons of Anarchy. That's a completely different. Just oh my god, it's fun to watch, but it's terrible for the motorcycle community. But the code of chivalry that existed in the Middle Ages, in the 11th century, 12th century, 13th century, before it became commodified and people could buy a knighthood. Um, that viewpoint of the world and that way of doing things and that way of respecting one another as a brotherhood,
Mhm.
you can trace that line directly through history, through military law and whatnot, the British and Americas, all the way to the 20th century when motorcycle clubs begin to get founded. And so in the and that code still exists within the motorcycle culture, right? I mean, you can transliterate it exactly. So anywhere they talk about horse, you put motorcycle. Any they talk about a lance, you can talk about knives or guns or whatever. It's you can actually just transcribe that directly into motorcycle culture. It's about martial prowess and respect, showing respect for one another, and trying to find a way to solve problems with one another without killing one another.
Mm.
That's the whole Hollywood thing is what that's about. Um, but so that's the paper I want to write. That's the book I want to write is I want to break that down into pieces and say, here's why we should understand this subculture of America, and understand that it's a viable and very valuable part of American culture.
Yeah, no, that's good. Is there something on your bucket list to learn or do?
Oh yeah, bucket list. Let's see. I want to go. I really want to go to Ireland. My family name and all that comes from Ireland, so I'd really love to go to Ireland and kind of look all that stuff up, and uh, just go back there. I think that would be a lot of fun. I'd like to go to Australia before it gets burnt again. You know. As far as things to do, and I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot left. I've
Get
jumped
it
out of
all.
planes. I've jumped out of planes. I've been a soldier. I've been a percussionist in my life. I've been I'm an academic now. I've always been in positions of my life where I've just protected other people. So but anything I've ever wanted to do, I've just done it. Um, I didn't worry about what it cost. I didn't worry about, how hard it was. I just went, okay, I'm gonna go do this.
Yeah,
I've traveled the country on the back of a motorcycle, and there's no better way to travel if you're safe about it.
yeah,
Um, but there's not a whole lot. I mean, other than traveling places that I've never been. Um, I'd like to go back to Egypt. I was in Egypt for a minute when I was in the military, but I was doing military stuff, so there was no time to go and hey, let's look at the pyramids.
yeah.
We didn't get to do that, but I'd like to do that. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Um, the Ireland trip. Are you planning on flying there and getting on a bike and then doing?
Yeah, ideally, yeah, I would fly there and then rent a bike from a Harley dealership and travel the country on travel Ireland on the back of a Harley.
No, that's good.
Just because I think there's no better way to experience travel, just being in the open air and, you get rained on.
Yeah,
Yep, it happens, and it's real easy, you just stop riding while it's raining, you know. It's really not that hard to do, man.
that's a novel idea. Um,
Right?
is there anything you want to unlearn?
Yeah, violence. I want to unlearn it. I've lived my life by it. It's caused me, ups and downs. It's caused me no end of problems in my life.
Yeah,
I'd like to unlearn that being a reflex. Um, because anytime I feel, like I think like anybody else who's lived their lives in dangerous places or through combat trauma, anytime I feel threatened, my initial response is one of the best defense is a good offense, I guess is the way to put it. If I feel threatened, I'll be the one who swings first because I'm not going to let you just I'm not going to get sucker punched at 50. You know what I'm saying? That's a bad plan. So that's how you get expensive teeth. So, but I would like to unlearn that. I would like it to not be part of my, kind of my psyche. I'm working towards that. It's just a very long road when your life has been kind of defined by, these moments of trauma and violence.
yeah,
Violence has been purported on me and violence that I purported on other people. I'm
yeah,
not proud of that. It's just what it is. So,
yeah. No, that's a difficult one to unlearn. Like you said,
mm-hmm.
it is a lifetime.
And it's a societal construct in America. That's the thing is you can go to Germany and whatnot. Like in America, we kind of we kind of teach our boys, right? Or we used to, I don't know if we still do it or not, but when I was growing up, you would teach your boys to kind of, if you had two boys, you would teach them to wrestle, to kind of
Yep.
scuffle with one another,
Yep. Yep.
right? To learn how to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Go to Germany, they don't do that. Them boys start fighting, man, they're on that, like, they're like, knock it off, you know? Um, and it's a societal thing that in America, we are a violent culture.
Yep.
I mean, I think the only culture that's more violent than we are at this point, I think, is in Scotland, you know, as far as physical violence per capita goes. You know,
What have you learned recently that changed your perspective on the subject, product, or idea?
mm. I was watching, so yesterday I was watching a video, and I'm gonna forget this, the man's name. His first name is Emmanuel, and I cannot remember his last name, but he was interviewing Matthew McConaughey, and it's another it was a podcast, I think, or a video, something he does. It's called Difficult Conversations with a Black Man. I don't know if you've or Uncomfortable Conversations with a
Yeah,
Black Man.
yeah, I've heard about it. Yep.
Yeah. He was having a conversation, and Matthew McConaughey brought up this thing that he was taught by somebody else. It was a novel concept to me. And he said, we have what are called white allergies. And I was like, what the heck? Okay, so I'm going to learn, you know, right? I'm going to learn something. And so he began to explain it. And it's growing up in America as a white man, or as a white woman, as a white person in this country. Um, there are things that we don't realize are absolutely ingrained into us as being racist. And we don't even realize it's happening.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, so one of those things is, he talked about, the host came back and said, you know, this is like, I've tried to explain to people, um, that there are left-handed compliments, right? Like, people will say to me, right? And I've heard people say this to Black men as well. They'll say, you're very articulate. That's not a fucking, sorry. That's not a compliment, right? That's not a compliment, right? That is an absolutely racist statement.
Right,
Like,
right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Did you not realize that there are educated Black men in the world? I mean, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
people have said that to me because of the way I look, right? They immediately snap judge me, right? Because I guarantee you, I've walked into many meetings, right? Many places in the world, and nobody thought, oh, I bet he's smart. You know? I mean, this is a bet I win 100% of the time when I ask people, what do you think I do for a living? Right? They're like, construction worker, truck driver, serial killer, right? They just come at me, you know, and then when I tell them I'm a professor, they're like, and I have to show them my business card. Here's my driver's license, you know. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's a good one.
But so that's something that I learned, that I'm like, oh my God, you know, I've been guilty of that, right?
Mhm.
Um, like the media will say, they'll say something like, well, she's very pretty for a Black girl.
Mm.
Wait, well, you could have just stopped at pretty,
Yeah.
but they didn't, right? They have to have a qualifier with that, right? It's the same thing we did to women for, centuries, right? Like, oh, you're smart. Yeah. Right. And my daughter's brilliant. She's beautiful, right? She's one of the most frightening intellects I've ever encountered in my life, right? Truly, truly frightening intellect. She's wicked smart, right? Um, and people will tell her that, like, oh, well, you're really smart for a pretty girl. I'm sorry. Was it a choice? Were we selecting off a menu of what we're allowed to be? You know?
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that's something that I learned, right? That I was like, oh man. But the term white allergies, I think, is a very powerful one, that, like, because allergies are something you're exposed to, that they just develop over time. You just, and so growing up, you're just like, oh, well, yeah, I didn't realize that was a thing. You know what I'm saying? It's really weird. Like, I've heard all my life people say, well, why you people, friends of mine and whatnot, they'd say, why are you acting Black? There again, white allergy,
Yeah.
right? As an educator, I think that's going to help me going forward to identify those things in my students. Cause I live in a cross where I teach, my students are a cross section of rural students and urban students, right? And city dwellers and farm dwellers. And so, and we do a really good job of kind of making sure that everybody feels comfortable on our campus and whatnot. Nobody feels out of place and whatnot. But I want to have that conversation. I want to have that conversation in my classroom. I want to do that, right? And I think a lot of teachers are afraid to do that because they're a white male or a white female, you know, um, or what have you, and so they're afraid that if they bring that up, then they're going to be viewed as being X, or or whatever, being
Mhm.
viewed as a racist or trying to be political or something of that nature. And I'm like, this is not a political thing, man. This is a human rights thing. And that, if I've said it over and over and over again, if you have a problem with someone having the same rights as you, you're a racist,
Right.
period, right?
Yep.
If you've never had the Supreme Court decide whether you get to marry somebody or not, you need to sit down, because this ain't your fight, right? You don't get to talk anymore. You're done,
Yeah.
you know?
On your campus, you say you have rural and urban students. Do they stay on campus, or is it
We're a
they're
commuter campus.
okay?
We're a commuter campus. So they we have students who come in, they mix together in classes and on campus and whatnot, and then they go back home. So it's a little more challenging to change some viewpoints that way, because you don't have the contact hours that you have on a residential campus.
Yeah,
So we have to do a lot more work within the classroom, you know.
indeed, indeed. Well, good luck. I'm sure you will. The first step is always the hardest step. So
Yeah.
just starting the conversation, I'm sure. You know, it, of course, these conversations are always tenuous and tricky. Uh, they're emotionally, just like a powder keg a lot of times. But I think it's needed, right? So I think you having those conversations in your class would be good.
The hard one to have right now is when you start talking about police and people overstepping their authority, and police brutality and things like that. Because I have kids in my classrooms. Kids, they're adults, they're college students, but I have people in my classroom who have been victims of police brutality, whether that's stop and frisk, whether that's I pulled you, you're driving while black, or whatever.
Mhm.
That's all brutality, right? It's meant to keep people in a place,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then I have kids sitting in there whose parents are police officers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now you've got this person saying that, the police are this, police are that. And this person is like, well, not my dad, not my mom. Right. And so you've got that feels like a personal attack. And that's a very hard conversation to have. And so when I do that, I go, okay, so you feel attacked right now because this person is talking about your mom or dad. Right. Now imagine for a minute, you're this person and you got stopped because of the color of your skin, and see how you feel attacked.
Yeah.
Right. Just stop for a minute, get outside of yourself. And that's a very hard thing to get
Yeah,
people
yeah,
to
no,
do.
it is. It is. It is.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
I try to flip it on them so that they can understand that this is why this is an emotional thing, is because we have friends, family, and relatives who are on both sides of this thing.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Um, you know,
No, it's tough.
yeah.
What can you think of any advice that you would give your younger self?
Advice I would give my younger self. Ooh, yeesh. Exercise more, drink water,
That's good. That's good.
quit smoking earlier, right? So I smoked for 30 years. I quit that earlier. That'd have been great. Um, and stop viewing the world as, a large swath of the world as the enemy. Um, I had some issues with that when I first left the military. That I felt like I didn't belong anywhere.
Mm.
That there was nobody who understood me. Um, and so it cost me it cost me some friendships and relationships. But it drove some wedges between me and family members. Some things that, because I just viewed as, I only knew one way to argue, one way to fight, and that was completely destroy whoever I was arguing or fighting with. And so that's not a good way to go through life, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Was,
that and start getting tattoos earlier. I would have done that too.
what's your, how many tattoos do you currently
I got 3 right now. So I have this one on my hand, right,
have?
which is a scorpion. I have this one that's a huge armor piece that goes all the way into my back, and so this is the first one I got. I'm a man of extremes, Mike. So this is the first one I got. It's a huge, huge piece of tattoo work. It's about 10 hours worth of tattooing, and then I have another one over here.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to get another one here shortly. I'm going to get a scorpion put up here on my shoulder. So,
You like
but yeah, so
nice. What's the best money advice you've received?
best money advice I've ever received. Man, never get a credit card. Don't do it. You don't need it. Here's the deal. If people will be like, well, how do you live without a credit card? You don't need one. You have a debit card now, right? So nobody needs a credit card. If you need to rent a car or something, you can use your debit card. It's fine. Don't get a credit card. Because here's the reason why, right? If you have money, you don't need credit. The only people who need credit are people who don't have money. So begin paying yourself every time you get paid. Pay you first. I don't care if you're making $200 a week. Pay yourself $20 of that, right? 10% of whatever you're bringing in. Don't give it to somebody else. Don't give it to a church. Give it to you, right? Because the church is not going to be there when you retire to pay your electric bill. You're going to be there to pay your electric bill, right?
Yeah.
Pay you first. And then if you want to pay a church, that's up to you, right? But make sure you pay you first, right? And so there's a lot of people out there who are not paying themselves. And then they get to be 40, 50 years old and they look around and they're like, I'm never going to be able to retire. I'm never going to be able to do this. And if you pay yourself first, then you never miss that money. It's just always going to be there in that account, right? If you're bad with money, if you're like, oh, I'm no good with money, okay, then set you up an account where you have to have 2 signatures to get money out of that account.
That's a good
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Set that up. Whether that's with your brother, with your sister, your mom and dad, whomever you got, right? Just make sure that you got to have 2 signatures to get that money out, right? Into a savings account. And then you have to think about it. You have to think about, am I going to spend that money or not? If it's truly an emergency, that other person's not going to have any problem signing that paper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But if it's not an emergency, don't do it. Don't do it. Right. And watch that money grow, right? Watch that money grow, right? Because there's not. I'm going to tell you this. It's great to have a $30,000 car, but that's nothing compared to having $30,000 in the bank. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
those are good. Those are some jewels. Those are good advice. What has been the toughest thing you've had to tackle, and what helped you get through it?
Toughest thing I've had to tackle is I lost my mother, and I'm still not through
it.
Yeah. My mom was my best friend my whole life. She was the one person on earth that would speak truth to me no matter what. There are people around you who will not speak the truth to you because they're afraid to hurt your feelings. They're afraid of you, right? As I said, I was not a great person when I was younger. And there were people around me who were afraid of me, but they were, they were my friend because they didn't want me as an enemy. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But my mother was the one person on earth that, through 47 years of my life would speak the truth to me no matter what. One of her favorite things to say was, I carried you in my body for 9 months and I fed you and raised you for 18 years and you're going to listen to what I have to tell you. And I'm like, And every year on my birthday, brother, I would send my mother a dozen roses with a card that just said, thank you for not saying no. Because she could have said no at any moment. She could have been like, this, he just ain't worth it, but she taught me that. And, getting through my mother was my sounding board. She was my conscience in a lot of ways. When I would have one of those kind of self-destructive thoughts, I would call my mother, and she would talk me through it. And, I had a great relationship with her. I don't have any regrets. I just miss her,
Yeah.
I just miss her so much, So that's the hardest thing I'm trying to get through. PTSD is another one. It's right up there too. It's taken me 20 years to get where I am today, you know, where I feel like I can talk about things and not be emotional about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what qualities or character traits do you admire in other people?
Honesty. I admire honesty. And a lot of people say, "Oh, I want you to be honest," and then when you're honest with them, they get mad. You become my ass or whatever. And I'm like, whatever. I want people to be honest with me. I want you to tell me the truth. I want you to, I don't, even if it hurts my feelings. I'm like, my father used to say, I'd say you hurt my feelings, and he said, better your feelings than your ass. And that's just that's the way I kind of view it. Is I'd rather people be honest with me. And that honesty encompasses so much, right? Integrity goes
Yeah.
into that, trustworthiness. I mean, there's so many things that go into being honest with people that are just that take care of everything else. Um, Compassion, empathy, being able to put yourself in the place of another human being. Maybe I don't know what it is to be another human being, but I can imagine how I would feel if I were in that scenario, right?
Mhm.
And I think we need a lot more of that in the world. You know, Nobody wants sympathy. Nobody wants you to feel sorry for you, right? I think I can say that almost categorically that I never wanted people to feel sorry for me because I had these experiences. I just wanted people to understand why I may not process the world the same way you do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, you know, so I think those are the the ones that I value the most.
Yeah.
Intelligence. Um, you got to surround yourself with intelligent people. Um, and if you're the smartest person in every room you walk into, you're in the wrong rooms. You need to find a new room to walk into where you can learn.
Indeed. Indeed. So, what are red flags that you try to stay away from?
Uh, People who are shifty, who say they'll do something then don't do it. That's a red flag for me. Because I'm a man of my word. If I tell you I'm going to do something, whether it's good or bad, I'm going to do it. Right. If I tell you, hey, I'll be there to pick you up at 6 o'clock, I'm going to be there to pick you up. Right. If I tell you do that again, I'm going to hit you in the mouth. I'm going to hit you in the mouth. Right. I'm there again. I'm trying to get away from that. But I'm a man of my word. So, so people who are shifty, who don't follow through on things is a red flag for me. Um, People who don't like an animal for some ungodly reason. I know people who are like, I don't like cats, and I'm like, why do you not like cats? Well, because they're cats. That's not a reason. That's not a reason. You know what I'm saying? That's not a reason. It's just not. It's just not. It's that's nah. Because I think those people also are a little bit sexist, a little bit racist, a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They don't have to have a reason for something. Like if you were attacked by a cat when you were a child and you had some trauma, okay, let's talk about that. But just because they're a cat, that's that don't work for me. So those are red flags for me, right? You know.
That's
So
that's a interesting heuristic to live by. I'm
yeah.
actually gonna start. I'm gonna start listening for it. If someone ever says,
You will. You'll hear it. You'll hear people just like, I don't like cats, or I don't, I'm I'm afraid of sharks, right? Because my old man took me to see Jaws at too young an age, right? But I don't hate sharks.
right,
They just scare me.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I live in the Midwest. I'm never going to meet a shark living here. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, yeah,
So, that's the whole thing of it is that. And then people who lie on other people. Like, and I think we all did this when we were kids. You're like that whole my mom said no trick, because you didn't want to do something.
mhm,
But people who walk up to you and go, I don't want to do this, but the boss said you got to do it, right? That to me, that's lying on other people. People call it passing the buck or whatever. Um, you know, that just drives me crazy. If if I need to do something, just come tell me to do it. Don't be spineless about it, so yeah, those are red flags for me.
Nice, nice. All right. Time for a fun question.
Yeah.
If you won the lottery tomorrow, what will you do?
If I won the lottery tomorrow, well, I've actually had this conversation this week. First thing I would do is pay off my house because that is a pragmatic thing to do. Um, because the greatest thing you can ever do is reclaim your paycheck, get out of debt. So I would do that. Um, I would, uh, I would make an endowment for the college that I work for, and I would build them a huge state of the art library for people to learn. Um, and and then on top of that, I would make them put a statue out front, a bronze statue of me leaning against a motorcycle drinking a cup of coffee, just because. But yeah, I would do that. I would donate that money. There would be a lot of donations go, simply because if you're looking at, I don't know what average lottery winning is, but let's say it's $10 million, right?
Well,
$10 million. People are like, well, $10 million isn't a lot of money. Have you ever had $10 million? You ever been in the same room with $10 million? We don't know what $10 million looks like. They show us on TV that $1 million will fit in a briefcase, but it won't. $100,000 will fit in a briefcase.
right.
$1 million will fit in a suitcase, right? But everybody thinks that's the reality of it. So we don't know. We don't know how much money that is. And so there would be a lot of donations. I would make sure that my closest friends in my life, people who've been my ride or dies for 25 years, I would make sure that they and their children would never have to work again if they choose not to. They go to college, they do whatever they want to do. And then I would keep enough money for me to live on.
Yeah.
So, which is, I don't need a lot. I'm a very simple man.
Nice, nice. Is there anyone that you would like to thank or express your appreciation for that you haven't had the chance to yet?
Uh, man. Um, um, no, I mean, I'm pretty kind of, at this, over the last few years anyway, I'm pretty, straightforward and expressive with folks, and about tell them that I love them, tell them that I appreciate them, thank you.
Uh,
um and that's always come about since my father died, because my father died when I was 28. He was 58, which is too young. um and I had a lot of regrets, a lot of things that I wish I'd have said. I wish I'd, you have a lot of those things where you go, oh, I wish I. And I made sure that I didn't have that with my mother, that I had conversations with my mother, and I had the relationship with my mother that I wanted for the last 20 years of her life. Um, and so and through that, I've learned to do that with other people. With my daughter, with, my significant other, my old lady who's sitting over here playing on her phone. Um, I know she's trying to be quiet. Um, but I've been really, really good about, I think, telling people that I appreciate them and thank you and I love them. I'd like to thank Taylor for recommending me for this, because this has been a great conversation. It's a lot of fun.
nice, nice.
I absolutely adore her. She's one of my favorite people on this earth right now. So I say right now, like it's going to change, whatever.
That's good. All right, for our final question, how do you define success?
How do I define success? First and foremost, happiness. That is, you find, and I don't, success is not about a job to me, right? Success is about making sure that I'm doing the right things because they're the right things to do, right?
Mhm.
That's integrity. That's being honest. That's being, it's being, who are you when nobody's looking, right?
Mhm.
When nobody, when the camera's on, everybody is, oh, but who are you when nobody's looking? Who are you, when, if you have a choice to make, right? And there's no, I guess there's no good way for you to, or something that you're going to gain from it, what helps you make that decision. So doing the right things because of the right things to do, I think is what I would say is, how you live a successful life, you know, um, but I don't look at success as a job. I love what I do, right? And I think I think I'm marginally good at it. Other people would disagree. People tell me, "Oh, you're a great teacher," and I'm like, "Oh, I don't think that. I think I'm a great communicator. It's a different thing, but I really I love what I do. I've never been happier personally, professionally in my life. And I think it's because I married all the things that I love into kind of the way my life is. I love reading, I love writing, I love medieval literature, and I love the whole code of chivalry and knighthood, and I love motorcycles and helping kids. And so, when I was in graduate school, I had a professor who said, "Find the thing in the world that breaks your heart, and then break your back trying to fix it."
Mm.
And man, that hit me like thunder. I was like, wow. That was just a really powerful moment. And so the two things that break my heart in the world are ignorance, right? Or people who are uneducated, you know, and people who are, and abused children. Those things break my heart because kids don't deserve that. They deserve to be cherished. So
Great way to end. We connected, we politic, and we will definitely do this again in the near future. I'll definitely take your advice on the live stream.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, thanks a lot.
I think live streaming is a good way to go, brother. I really do. I think what you're doing is people really want to see it, and live streaming allows people to interact and kind of converse at the same time. So that conversation that you want to have, you can have it in real time. And I live stream 3 times a week, so
Nice.
it's made a huge difference in me. So I thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you.